Hey guys, what's up? I got everybody here from TMI. Don't forget to write us an email at tmipodcast2018. That's tmipodcast2018 at gmail.com. Let us know how we're doing. Also, check us out on Twitter.
Follow us on Twitter at TMI _ podcast 2018. Just use the numbers, don't spell it out.
Ooh, don't forget facebook.com/TMI podcast 2018.
Follow us on the Apple Podcast app. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a 5-star review.
All you YouTubers out there, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, TMI Podcast 2018. Look for the popcorn bucket.
That's right. Also, check us out on Spotify and the Google Play Music app for all you Android users. Follow us and subscribe everywhere. We appreciate it. We're doing it for you guys, the fans. Thank you.
The moment our fellow geeks, dweebs, nerds, and other unfortunates have been fervently waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Dave Odinson Warhowski, Jeff Nerfherder Chandler, Jim Kaiju Baker, and Mike Mjolnir Evans. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
So welcome, everybody.
Hey, this is
Happy
special.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk turkey.
I'm hungry.
Welcome to our first monster movie holiday double feature.
Double feature.
We are commemorating the classic days of old Black Fridays past of the WOR Channel 9 variety. If anybody out there listening is from the New York area, you will know exactly what we're talking about. WPIX and WOR were local syndicated TV stations that were local to New Jersey, New York, that played all the genre films that we are so enamored with today. And that's the reason that we're who we are, I think. A large part of it.
In large, yeah. This was really informative years, basically set my tone for what I enjoyed as a kid. Watching these movies just takes me back to that 10-year-old curled up on the couch with a bowl of Fruity Pebbles and just being completely engrossed in these monster movies. And again, that was always Thanksgiving. That was, as a kid, you were never invested in what was being prepared for the day. If anything, you were out of the way. They wanted you out of the picture. Get out of the kitchen, go, do whatever. And so curling up in front of the TV and watching these.
The Macy's Day Parade.
To this day, the minute I get up Thanksgiving morning, that parade comes on.
But still, even as much as I enjoyed watching that parade, that was always just a precursor to King Kong showing at 1 o'clock or whatever. It was just a countdown.
Yeah, there you go.
King Kong starting.
Yep. Once you saw Santa, you're like, all right, man, it's on.
And the actual meal, the Thanksgiving meal, was an interruption to my watching.
I remember specifically, and this was, I had to have been really young at my grandparents, my grandma and grandpa Chandler's, and my grandmother had made Thanksgiving dinner, and Moby Dick was on. Now, that's a heavy-handed movie for a little kid. But I was so invested in any time that whale was on screen. And I just remember being dragged from the television. And it was, those old school consoles on the floor that probably weighed 800 pounds encased in oak, black and white, watching that movie.
Yeah, so it looked like a furniture piece rather than a TV.
Basically. Yeah, it was a monstrosity. It was a centerpiece of most of your house,
Yeah, and I remember my grandparents' TV, you could actually close the two doors, slide them shut so you couldn't see the screen anymore. So it just looked like a big bureau or something that was.
If you got really close, you could put the doors halfway, and it was like you had your own private little screening.
Or you could simulate the opening of the curtains in the theater.
There you go.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So what WOR Channel 9 used to do And Jeff, did you grow up in the New York area as well? Or
I did. We were far enough upstate. There was a point in my life where once my sister was born, I was probably 10, 11. We moved up into the middle of nowhere, and we had no cable. We had 2 channels. But a lot of my memories of movies like this, at one point we lived down in town, and I was able to have PIX. You know, I grew up with Magic Garden and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And like you said, I remember staying home while my mother went shopping at the tender age of probably 10, 11, 12 years old, watching Godzilla movies, just curled up and completely invested while the rest of the world went on.
Yeah.
That was my world.
Yeah, and we just let them go on and had not a care for anything else.
Yeah, so watching these 2 movies, I got up yesterday morning. I curled up with a bowl of cereal, a little cup of coffee now, and I channeled that inner 10-year-old. And it was glorious.
This show is going to be filled with nostalgic.
Yeah, because it's hard to really kind of tear apart these movies. It's more, it's nostalgia, and it's just recapturing that childhood kind of awe.
Definitely. What WOR used to do was on Thanksgiving Day, they would play King Kong first. About 1 o'clock it would start. So I would always invariably end up missing probably the second feature. It would be King Kong first, then Son of Kong, and then Mighty Joe Young. Sometimes they would flip it. Sometimes they do Mighty Joe Young first, and then King Kong, and then Son of Kong. But it was always those 3 movies. Son of Kong, completely inferior to the original King Kong. I didn't mind missing that so much, but they usually always put that on at the end. So that's the one I would always see, because by the time dinner was finished, that would be coming on.
You're like, I missed the other one.
The next day, however, was really the one that I was looking forward to. Black Friday was not about shopping for me. It was about the 3 Godzilla films back-to-back on WOR. They would play first either King Kong versus Godzilla or Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, depending on the year.
Yep.
Second would always be Godzilla versus Megalon with Jet Jaguar, our robot friend. And then third, always the finale, would be Godzilla versus the Smog Monster, a fitting finale as well. Now, as Jeff said, you'd sit there in your blanket. I would have all my Star Wars action figures out, my Godzilla Shogun Warriors figure, anything that I could have like sitting there assembled, like with me to watch these films. My leftovers from the previous day, like readily available.
Turkey cranberry sandwich.
Yep, exactly.
Nice.
So I would be set. And I could not move an iota, especially on that Friday. On the Thursday, okay, I could be moved. But Friday, I was sat down there, and I was not moving until Smog Monster was rolling the end credits. So today, we are going to revisit 2 of those movies that I just mentioned. First up is King Kong versus Godzilla. Classic, which they are remaking for release in 2020. Yeah. Not really a remake, but part of the new King Kong Godzilla series that Legendary Pictures has been doing since 2014.
To that end, Legendary, we were talking in a previous episode, the build-up with the Godzilla King of all monsters, and they're bringing back a lot of these Toho monsters or whatever. But Kong Skull Island, they did a great job of rebuilding Kong, establishing him as a much larger creature. But this King Kong versus Godzilla is so iconic in some of its scenes. So when it comes to promoting Legendary, all I want to see is a giant Kong being floated over Manhattan on balloon. Right? Whether
yes.
You've got drones controlling the helicopters or whatever. What a great promotional, like, don't even tell anybody about it. Just this giant Kong floating over Manhattan, suspended by wires and balloons, heralding the coming of this movie.
Do you remember for one of King Kong's anniversaries, they did an inflatable balloon up at the top of the Empire State Building?
It was at the 50th. I think that was like the 50th anniversary.
For I don't know how long it was up there, but that was a publicity stunt that we could use again, I think.
Yeah, no, I think a little viral marketing goes a long way, especially when you're trying to recapture this type of a movie, which we've had this conversation before, which doesn't always get its due. What man in suit? That kind of chuckle. I did a fairly good job as a parent turning my son onto all these old Godzilla movies. And he, in turn, would then sell it to all of his friends, and his friends would come home and be like, Dad, we need to watch this. And the dad would come to me, he's like the Godzilla movies we watched as kids? And I'm like, yeah, they're still making them. Like, people they judge based on the 2 or 3 that are out there, and they're like, wait a minute, they still exist?
Yeah, the difference between us is other adults, they're receded long in the annals of their memory, while it's still a daily reality.
It's a daily reality. Not a day goes by, I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
Godzilla.
So this movie, King Kong vs. Godzilla, was the third in the Godzilla series called the Showa series by Toho. Classic original. So we had the first Godzilla, which was Raymond Burr in the American version.
Yep.
Then we had Godzilla Raids Again, which was released in America as Gigantus the Fire Monster. Because apparently Warner Brothers, who released it, didn't have rights to the Godzilla name. It's a long story. So then we have King Kong vs. Godzilla as the third film in this series. So at the end of Gigantus the Fire Monster, Godzilla is the Japanese army corners him. I don't know where he is exactly, but he's in a very snowy region, and they fire some rockets and cause an avalanche, and he's buried in a mountain of snow. So at the beginning of King Kong vs. Godzilla, that's where you see Godzilla. There's a nuclear submarine at the beginning of the movie that senses radiation from this one particular iceberg. They approach, and boom. The captain of this nuclear sub is the most inept captain I have ever seen, because he's got some UN delegates in the submarine with him.
Yeah, they're all...
Yeah, Captain, what are you doing? What's going on?
Captain, propeller shaft engine's badly damaged. Engine room reports repairs impossible.
Oh, great.
Do something before we are crushed to death.
Fire Mayday water signal.
And the captain just literally says at one point, "Oh, great."
Oh, great. Well, I like the fact when they're like, abandoned ship. You're in a submarine. How can you abandon ship? It's not like there's escape pods or anything.
This guy went to the same acting school, apparently, as Jeffrey Wright, who, the most laid-back actor on the face of the earth. Oh, great. Yeah.
Bummer.
We've run dead on into an iceberg.
So Godzilla releases from the iceberg.
From an iceberg. So this is what leads me into, I don't really want to go over the plot. So anybody listening to this, hopefully as a Godzilla fan, will have seen this movie numerous times. So we do have two versions of this. We have the Japanese version, and we have the American version. It's one of the last times where an American production of a Godzilla movie really added a lot of bonus scenes and American actors. They made an effort to Americanize this film.
Well, they did basically what they did with the same thing with adding Raymond Burr to the original, which was bringing all these American actors and just kind of like fleshing out the exposition, for lack of a better term.
What better way to do it than use a newscast?
Right.
Yeah, that we cut to.
It was like the guy at the UN. You know who he reminded me of? Was Vince Vaughn. I'm like, if they remade this right now, they should get Vince Vaughn to play this character.
And he's coming to you via the International Communications Satellite.
Yeah, which is just like a giant casino,
exactly. And you can see
wheel.
The strings holding it up.
Oh, yeah. And there's every time they showed it, it was the exact same scene, a little spaceship showing up or whatever. That was used numerous times.
But here we go. Here's some of the disconnect between the Japanese and the American version, because Godzilla comes out of the iceberg, right, at the beginning. And you see the two pilots in the helicopter say, "Godzilla!"
Godzilla! The world is stunned to discover that prehistoric creatures exist in the 20th century. Tracking stations show Godzilla heading in a southeasterly direction towards the offshore islands of Japan.
Right.
They obviously know who this is.
Right.
But then we cut to the newscaster who says the world is stunned to see prehistoric monsters exist. And
obviously, he didn't see the last two movies.
But then he calls him Godzilla in the next sentence.
Right,
so it's like, do you know who this is or you don't? So,
well, the same thing holds true when we start talking about Godzilla versus Smog Monster, which is the kid names it Hydra, and then immediately that's what they're calling it on the news.
Yes,
and you're
exactly.
Like, did the kid tell you that?
Yeah.
So you're right. The whole thing was like, oh yeah, it's Godzilla. Godzilla.
During these fake newscasts, like that punctuate the actual Japanese scenes, you've got experts coming in talking about King Kong and Godzilla. And one guy says, well, lizards shy away from electricity. I'm like, well, really?
Right.
Is that a scientific fact?
He actually pulls up like a kid's little book on dinosaurs. And he's like, well, this is a Tyrannosaurus mixed in with a Stegosaurus, also known as the plated dinosaur. What am I, 4? I can tell you better. Now, was the Japanese version ever released?
Not outside of Japan. No,
not
I was
outside of Japan.
Because a lot of these movies are readily available. For a lot of the DVDs you can get or the Blu-rays now.
Right.
Of Destroy All Monsters, of Godzilla versus Mothra.
But they're not necessarily the Japanese version.
Well, they do. Actually, they have one track that's the American version and one track that's the Japanese version. That has never happened with King Kong versus Godzilla. Maybe, I think because something to do with the rights for the character of King Kong that Toho wouldn't be able to release.
Which is just the worst looking Kong ever.
Oh, it is.
He is a bad... They wanted him to be the hero. He's the hero in this
He is.
Godzilla's the bad guy.
King Kong looks like the heat miser in this movie.
Yeah, it looks like if you put a candle to him, he'd melt. Yeah, the heat miser.
So as Jeff was saying, at this point, we've only had 2 Godzilla movies in Japan. So Godzilla is not the proven quantity that he is later on in his career. So
his career.
So King Kong at this point was much more popular as a movie character in Japan than Godzilla was. So Godzilla did play the villain, and Kong does win in both versions.
Yeah. How did that start? Because that was pre. I mean, that is a wives' tale that goes back to me as a 7-year-old.
Yeah, that actually
telling people, well, in the Japanese version, Godzilla wins.
That was erroneously reported in Famous Monsters of Filmland.
Is that where it came from?
Yes,
I guess because that was our only source of news for any of these monster things. Was Famous Monsters.
And, whoever was writing that article probably thought, it sounds great if I say that, knowing that there's a Japanese and an English version, but no, it's not.
There'll never be an internet where people can prove that wrong.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
People won't know any better.
So this was Kong's second or third? Because did Son of Kong come out before this?
It's his third, actually, yes.
It is. So it's third for both of them. Is this the first time that both characters have shown up in color?
Yes, and in widescreen as well.
And in widescreen.
Yes.
So it was a huge
deal. Yeah,
huge to-do.
And now initially, this script was first touted by the guy that did the special effects for the original King Kong. Willis O'Brien. That's who it is.
O'Brien, yeah.
So Willis O'Brien writes a script, King Kong versus Frankenstein. So he's got 2 iconic monsters going at each other, right? And this is probably 1960. So again, Godzilla is not really on the pop culture landscape at this point. So Frankenstein is a much more proven character. So he's chopping his script around, and he wants to do it stop motion like they did the original King Kong, but he can't get a studio to finance it because stop motion is still very expensive, even in those days. He gets an American producer to purchase the script, John Beck, who goes to shop it around to the various studios as well. And he finally has some success with Universal International and Toho, who are also looking to do another Godzilla film. And they thought that it would be a natural blend to bring Godzilla into it rather than Frankenstein. Somehow, some way, they managed to do it through John Beck acquiring the script rights. Willis O'Brien already had the okay to use the King Kong character, so somehow Toho gets the rights to use King Kong in not 1 but 2 movies, and they later use him again in King Kong Escapes. So that's where the origins of the story begin, right from Willis O'Brien, the horse's mouth, who created the original King Kong.
Now, didn't we get Giant Frankenstein movie?
We did, a little bit later. I don't know if they kind of robbed the cradle, so to speak, from that.
Because I do remember that.
Frankenstein Conquers the World was the name of the Toho movie. I don't know if it had anything, but the idea of a giant Frankenstein was brought back for that movie.
I feel like they spent absolutely no money whatsoever on that Kong costume.
And it was the 3rd Kong costume. The first 2 were rejected. Can you imagine?
Oh, no. It's like, that's the one. It's like, really?
It's terrible. You can actually see the human actor's skin through the eye sockets.
Yeah. Well, you know what I noticed for the first time, which is when you first see Kong, and again, it's a nice build-up. They go to the island, and so this pharmaceutical company goes to the island because they find these berries that have medicinal purposes or whatever, and so they're going to just rape and pillage and steal this stuff. And, of course, you got the villagers that are praying to their Kong god. But he's got these extendo arms. Like from the elbow down, his forearms are extended, I guess trying to simulate a monkey? He's an ape, first of all. But when he's picking up stuff, they disappear. So sometimes he's got really long arms, and other times he's got tiny little stub human arms. And it's just, it's very disconcerting when you and you're like, now they're gone. Oh, wait, they're back again.
And at one point, he tries to scratch his head with the extended arms, and he can barely do it.
Barely, right, because you're like, that was weird. I do love the opening sequence because they used real octopus to attack the village. Which is just great. And from what I understand, there was 3 or 4 octopus that they used, and they had to blow heat on them to get them to move. But 3 were released. The 4th one, they ate. So if you look at the credits, there's no no cephalopods were harmed in making it this movie. No, we ate one. Sorry. We gotta take the. Yeah, PETA was nowhere to be found during this movie.
And that scene is really nicely done. I think it's probably the highlight, special effects wise, of this movie is the octopus scene.
Yeah, I mean, you can see, throwing the little flames and the javelins at them, and you can actually see the shadows of the little things hitting the screen.
Yes.
It's just rear projected, but still, it's a tense moment because you have a little boy in danger, and the fact that it's a real octopus. Obviously, it's not when Kong steps in, and now it's just this fake.
Now it's fake with cellophane all over it.
Right? Yeah, it was kind of weird.
But the thing is that you can never find fault with the miniatures that Toho does for these movies. It's just these expertly done little miniature, and that's what sells that octopus scene, is that the environment that it's in looks like it's a real environment.
Yeah, they actually built a little hut that he goes over and it crushes, and you get into the tanks and all the other Godzilla robotic things. I like them. Godzilla like burns one, and they all turn around and run away like little mice.
Yeah,
like we're going back in.
But a lot of those moving vehicles, okay, they do look like toys a lot of the times. But the actual buildings that surrounds them are
when
works of art.
They first capture Kong and he's sitting on the building, he crushes it, and it crumbles. It doesn't look like a piece of cardboard that just folds. Right. I mean, this thing crumbles like
you can see the bricks like crumbling.
Right. Yeah. Somebody spent hours and hours on that thing just to have it destroyed.
I wonder if they shed a little tear when they're sitting offset, watching this happen. Yeah.
Well, I would think, because you get one take.
That's it.
Get one take on stuff like that. The actors that are in these suits, give them a lot of credit. That I can't imagine that it's easy. That it's how many times they're tripping over their own feet. I mean, Godzilla's got giant feet. Like I said, the Kong giant forearms.
No, and he's got the tail to deal with. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all on wires, and there's a lot going on there. I would like to be on set one day. That would be pretty cool. They'll never make another. And now it's all CG.
Yeah, they came out with that. That last one was that Shin Godzilla. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, I watched. I have it.
Yeah, it's a mixture, I think, of CG, but it's very effective.
Yeah, we Benny and I laughed that they probably 3/4 of that budget went to office sets because they were always like in meetings. They just cut from one meeting to another. It's like a meeting on a meeting.
I think that they probably watched the 2014 American version of Godzilla and said, we got to do it like that. We've got to show Godzilla sparingly, and it's a little too sparingly in that movie.
Yeah. Kong, you can never take this guy to a concert because every time a drum solo comes, he's just going to fall asleep. Because that's all it takes. He has 2 little buckets of berries, and dude, he can't hang, man. He can't hang. He's out for the count.
And I'd just like to point out that the main character who plays the drums in the Tokyo scene to knock Kong out has the same rainbow pattern drum that they have on the island.
Oh, yeah, I think he stole it.
That? Yeah, he stole it.
I think he stole it.
Because he tells the one guy, go to my apartment, get my drums. And
right, exactly. The ones I stole, remember? And those guys are, talking about, we were talking American Werewolf previous episode. Again, you've got the bumbling 2 idiots that were kind of like our eyes and ears through this movie. And then their boss, who just reminded me of Mr. Furley from Three's Company.
Yeah, get me a monster. Any monster. I'm sick of Godzilla. I'm sick of Godzilla.
They call them ignorant, primitive savages. And I'm like, oh, that's not going to play very well.
No.
And they just placate them by giving them cigarettes. Even the little kid, they gave him a cigarette.
Kid,
like, oh, don't tell your mom.
Then after they give him, everybody's smoking. It's great.
Right, yeah. And then as Kong's like passing out, these women just like launch into this dance recital of Ain't Misbehaving. It's like this well choreographed. He's already out cold. Why are you dancing?
And it's funny.
Seductive.
I noticed a little kid trying to dance along with them.
Right. Well. Yeah.
But what's funny? I want to give props to that little Gilligan guy that was with the explorers on the island.
Yeah.
And also to the dubbing job, because obviously with the dubbing job, sometimes they're adding words in on the American dub to kind of fit the mouth movements of the. So a lot of the times the dialogue is bizarre. Like, for example, there's one scene where the Gilligan guide for our intrepid heroes on the island is trying to converse through the chief of the tribe. And he says at one point,
well, he ordered you to leave this place right now, at once.
Right now. At once.
At once.
Just to capture that last mouth movement.
Yeah.
So I love those little throwaway lines.
The original bad lip read all over the memes online now.
And the fact that they try to have very bad accents, like very vague Pacific accents, the American actors, when they're doing their voice lines for these movies.
Well, I got the impression, too, that some of those natives were kind of in blackface.
Oh, yeah. I think that they were all Japanese actors.
Yeah. Especially once they dump Kong, they get him into balloons, they float him. He wakes up. they drop him. It's just monster mayhem.
Yeah. Before we get there, that scene where he's on the raft behind the ship. I always like that one too. Where I'd always thought that was effective when. Are they or aren't they going to blow him up when the boss leans on the dynamite stick?
Right, it's shtick. It's shtick, but yeah. And then he does blow up, but he just miraculously can stand. They're not in that deep of water. So I think that was the first time they said that they utilized like that giant tank that Toho had built, which I guess they've filmed like every other movie ever made there. It's like this big, huge, massive water tank. So when they do those scenes... But yeah, the Kong he's questionable. He doesn't emote very much. Let's put it that way.
No, the mask is just static. It's just, it doesn't move at all. The body is just this big garbage bag of...
and he's on fire half the time.
Yeah.
Godzilla just keeps lighting him up.
There's no definition. It doesn't fit the actor inside. It's just hanging off the actor. So you can see the suit, the folds of the suit moving. It's terrible. The chest are just like two circles of skin, that are like into the suit. It's just bad. It's bad.
But as a kid, man, you bought into it. You didn't care. It was still Godzilla and King Kong, and they were going at it, shoving trees down his throat, which is a nice callback to the original Kong, right? Because then he did that to
the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Yeah, he did it.
Yeah, the T-Rex.
And the final battle does not disappoint because it's choreographed like a wrestling match. There's judo throws.
Yeah.
There's
grabbing him by the tail. He's spinning him around.
Leg swipes with the tail.
This was pre-WWE.
And it's very different than the fights that come afterwards in the Godzilla flicks because the other monsters aren't quite as mobile as Kong is.
Right.
But this is like fighting a man. So it is pretty cool.
They're just destroying buildings left and right. There is a great scene. It's a pullback, so you see the big building and you see it's from the people's point of view. You can tell that the two characters are just hand puppets.
As you say, it's like not even hand puppets. It's like stick puppets almost.
Yeah, basically. There was like it's just a little, just enough action in the background that you could see. But then again, we're watching this on a small little television. There was no high def back then.
Right.
So it was just like, there they are. You're just getting a sense of scale.
And there were I read two throwaway stop motion scenes in King Kong.
Oh, yes. Godzilla. I know one. When he drop kicks him.
Yes.
Right.
And Kong does
which is very obvious once you realize it. Once you know, you wait for it and you're like, there it is.
And I forget. I can't think of what the other one was. But I read that there was two. It was two scenes. I can't think of it. But then, so the battle rages on. Kong gets hit. Kong is losing actually to Godzilla until he gets hit by lightning. So apparently that's also a scientific fact. If a gorilla gets hit by lightning, they become super strong.
Yeah, and that came out of nowhere because they're like, the lightning storm. Kong gets strong. It's like, wait, it's never mentioned once in the movie. All of a sudden you're like, that's what's going to... All righty then.
Yeah, so then Kong gets a second wind after he gets hit by the lightning. Then Godzilla and Kong square off in a final showdown on opposite sides of that giant building that's on the edge of a cliff.
Right, just all by itself. It's like
so they destroy the building.
Turn of the century, 14th century building just destroyed by these.
And now Godzilla is kind of in retreat mode now because his back is to the ocean and Kong is trying to get over the building at him. So finally the building goes down. Kong tackles Godzilla. They both go over the edge of the cliff.
Tumble into the
in a great little scene because those must be puppets as well. But that tumble, that's kind of slow motion tumble before they hit the water. I think the two models that they use look great. They hit the water.
And the waterfall is it's like a giant cascading flood that just goes across the land. Yeah. It's like, that's a big ass splash.
Now that actually was not in the Japanese version.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they go into the water, and in the Japanese version, you just see a small tremor. Like I think where the human characters are, there's a tremor.
Okay, right.
But what they did was for the American version, they thought they needed to oomph up the ending a little bit, so they took the Mysterians, which is an older Toho movie that has a major earthquake scene,
and
they stole the scenes out of that movie and inserted them into the American
that makes
version
sense then because the devastation and the giant flood didn't really match up with what happened with the splash.
No, it did not at all.
But still, as a kid, you bought it. You're like, I don't care. Look at that.
So then the big reveal at the end of the movie is that Kong comes out of the water and there's no sign of Godzilla. And they pretty much keep it ambiguous. They don't come out and say that King Kong is the victor. They just say Godzilla is nowhere to be seen.
We wish him good luck on his long journey home. It's like, that guy's got a long way to swim.
Right. So you just have to imagine, was there a battle underwater before Kong comes up out of the water, you know?
Kong's like, time out. No, hold on. You know what, dude? I'm done.
Maybe Kong is running away. Who knows? Pro Godzilla's out there.
That's right. Well, I always wanted Godzilla to win, so I always wanted to see the Japanese version. So very disappointed to learn that Godzilla never won. I don't like that at all.
So Kong was meant to be the hero, both in Japan and in America.
Yeah. Now, was this a big hit when it came out?
Yes. I don't have the actual box office in Japan because it was yen and not dollars, so I have no idea.
You can't crunch your numbers on that one, Jim.
But to this day, box office wise, it's done the best out of all the Godzilla movies. Yes, to this day.
Wow.
It did very well.
It holds up. It holds up on repeat viewings. If you've never seen it, give yourself Black Friday. Don't go shopping. Curl up, pick your favorite cereal, and just treat yourself.
Absolutely. And the only other thing of note, I think that it was a relative hit, I guess, in the U.S. It came out in the summer of '63, a full year after it came out in Japan because they had to Americanize it. But I think it did very well. Apparently, it was a popular movie with the kids' matinees, audiences.
There is. Listen, for years, I always thought that it would be really cool if I bought a movie theater and just played these type of movies. You pay one price, you come in, you hang out. Maybe I put an arcade in there. Just a place for kids to go. And you just run these type of movies all day long. Maybe pick up some of the old Buster Crab Flash. Little monster movie. You do some of these monster movie double features or whatever.
Vintage trailers.
Yeah.
Make a whole thing out of it. Have it like one of those restaurant theaters where you can sit down and have something to eat as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a sci-fi theater. Was that sci-fi theater
in Disney? Yep.
Disney. Yep.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Yeah. They actually showed films in there instead of that, like repeating.
I know, right? At least give me like 2 hours worth of them so I don't. Most people eat in a 2 hour window at the most. Yep. So I don't want to see the same thing over again after. So, I always thought that would be a cool, I don't know, logistically, if kids nowadays would care one way or the other. But, just a safe place for people to dump their kids off and you go hang out.
I would love it. I would be there. Definitely.
So it's funny because you mentioned Godzilla's illustrious career, and I immediately envisioned Chinese theater with the feet in the concrete. And at some point, they should probably actually put his footprint in. It would be great. It would just take up the entire block.
I would be surprised if they didn't have something there for either King Kong or Godzilla in front of the Grauman's Chinese Theater.
Yeah, but it should be a life-size footprint.
It should be.
That would be genius.
Where you could fall into it.
Once again, legendary. If you're listening to us right now, I just gave you two marketing ideas building into this Godzilla versus Kong.
Because of the nostalgic theme of this episode, we're not going to run out to the concession stand as we normally do. But I've unearthed some vintage commercials from the early 80s.
I like it.
So just as if we're watching WOR-TV or WPIX TV as 10-year-olds, we're going to get the commercials.
Let's go.
So here you go.
Thursday afternoon, see 3 of the screen's greatest thrillers. Starting at 1 with the greatest of them all, the one and only original King Kong. Then the action continues with the Son of Kong, followed by The Mighty Joe Young, a classic tale of Beauty and the Beast. A full afternoon of action and adventure. Thursday afternoon at 1.
Hungry Hippos from Hasbro.
We'll continue with King Kong following these messages.
Hello, I'm Tom Dunn. Make this Christmas a reality for thousands of children in New York area hospitals and institutions. Show them you care. Give now to the WOR-TV Children's Christmas Fund. Ask us in Times Square Station, New York, 10108.
Join the circus like you wanted to when you were a kid. Join us. Right up your day and come see Barnum. Step right this way and come see Barnum. Stick your banner in your hand. Join the circus like you wanted to.
Barnum, Broadway's internationally acclaimed musical, winner of 3 1980 Tony Awards, now at the St. James Theater. Call charge at 212-944-9300.
The world's largest comic book and science fiction film convention is coming, and you're invited. November 27, 28, and 29 at the New York Statler Hotel in Manhattan, opposite Penn Station. Tons of old comics on sale. Scores of guest speakers, including film star Caroline Munro. Movie previews and art contests. November 27, 28, and 29 at the New York Statler. Tickets available at the door. For information, call 212-7850.
America is exploding with laughter from Time Bandits. Newsweek calls it a fantastical comedy.
Hello, I'm Hood.
Flat out hilarious. Us Magazine calls Time Bandits incredibly spectacular. The Wizard of Oz of the 80s. The New York Times says the special effects in Time Bandits are marvelous. The Los Angeles Times says it's one of the great fantasy adventure films.
Thank you very much. Very, very, very much.
Time Bandits. Rated PG. Now playing at a theater near you.
Get a stereo system for Christmas. Get a turntable, tape deck, speakers, receivers. Get a stereo for Christmas now, because Crazy Eddie's Christmas sale is going on right now. With prices so low, he's practically giving stereos away. Shop around, check all the advertised specials, get the best prices you can find, then go to Crazy Eddie and he'll beat them. So get a stereo for Christmas. Get it now, because Crazy Eddie's Christmas sale is on right now with prices that are insane. Crazy Eddie, now with 10 great locations in Manhattan, the Bronx, Brooklyn, Syosset, Paramus, East Brunswick, Union, Westchester, Westbury.
Tomorrow afternoon, starting at 1, WOR-TV presents a full afternoon of action and adventure. Jack Palance stars in Godzilla vs. the Cosmic Monster, followed by Godzilla vs. Megalon, and then Godzilla takes on the Smog Monster.
Okay, we're back.
That's cool. All right, that was cool. I like that. We need more of those. Awesome.
So our next film was the crowning jewel of Black Friday for me.
I don't know what this is.
Godzilla versus the Smog Monster.
Or, well, the Japanese version, he was not referred to as the Smog Monster, or was he?
He was not. I don't think
not.
he was, no. Even if you watch the Japanese film with the subtitles, with the Japanese language track, I don't think he was ever referred to as the Smog Monster. It's just Hedorah.
Or Hydra.
Hydra. And this,
Hydra.
Because I think we had the pronunciation Ghidra, so I think they just made the logical leap to Hydra, as just changed the first letter.
But it is spelled Hedorah, which is very good.
If you were to enunciate his name, it is Hedorah.
Which is what I've always called him. As a matter of fact, I even told my son yesterday while I was watching, and he corrected me. I said, well, according to this little kid, it's Hydra, who had some mighty short shorts for a kid.
Yes, he did. Although I don't think as short as the kid from Godzilla versus Megalon, who also...
Oh, no, yeah. But that had to have been the style, right?
It had to have been, yeah.
Like Pinocchio shorts with overalls.
Which is funny, because at the time I would have been watching this on TV, the style would have been for us, those shorts with the white stripes up the sides of them.
Right, yeah. This is a really odd
monster. It totally is. And I think that's why I really attached to it over the years.
I do remember, probably my first viewing of it, it just went over my head as a kid.
It's somewhat disturbing to watch as well.
So go back to our Soylent Green discussion, which is, it's relevant because we're still dealing with this crap.
It is.
It's scary. We just don't have an alien creature coming down and eating all of our garbage.
I think some of the most effective scenes in this movie are the floating garbage on top of the water.
Well, the mannequin, severed mannequin, floating in the garbage, and then they a little too on the nose with the grandfather clock.
I know, time's up.
Right? Yeah. And it even bonged at one point. So, but that opening sequence is so James Bond.
Actually, it's funny.
So Bond.
My wife said the same thing as we were watching it this time. Yeah.
Yep. I don't remember that at all, but it is straight up James Bond opening sequence.
So let's set you up with this picture here. This movie was made in 1971, and it was released in Japan in 1971. It came out in America a year later in 72. This was directed by Yoshimitsu Banno. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. First-time director, first and last time he ever directed a Godzilla movie.
I was just about to say maybe last time.
Because the director that directed most of the films before this, Inchiro Honda, I believe his name was.
Okay, yep.
Was ill.
He was unavailable, let's put it.
Unavailable, yes. So they gave the job to this Yoshimitsu Banno, I think, who had proven himself with commercial direction and things like that.
So let's give him a giant monster.
They gave him a shot, right? So he did the movie, and he wanted to make an ecological statement because he had seen pollution himself, seen smog over some cities in Japan. He had seen the garbage floating in the bays and some beachfront, and he wanted to do something that reflected his feelings on that. So he came up with a monster that was born of pollution.
Hence the Smog Monster.
Yeah, and he wanted to show actual civilian casualties, which you hadn't seen since the original Godzilla movie, the effect of this pollution on humans, and graphic deaths in some cases.
It's disturbing, because you're right. It is straight up. I mean, people, as this thing's flying over, he's releasing toxic farts, for lack of a better term. And people are dropping over, and then just a la Mars Attacks, they're just, all of a sudden, they're skeletons. They're clothes. And that's just like, it's a very disturbing. The little kid comes around the corner, and here's all the dead people.
Yep. So Banno, the director, makes this movie, and the producer of the Godzilla series, who had given him the shot, Tomoyuki Tanaka, was in the hospital at the time. So he wasn't overseeing the production or anything. So he had no idea what was going on. He had just okayed the script. And he was shown the final version and was horrified.
Livid.
I guess this guy lost his shit in the hospital room and fired the director. You'll never work.
Was Frank Oz there yelling at him?
Yeah. Mr. Banno, Mr. Banno,
calm down. Ah.
So the guy never worked a Godzilla movie again. And unfortunately, before he was fired, he actually started a treatment of a sequel to Godzilla versus the Smog Monster, where Hedra would come back. But this time they would fight in Africa for some reason. So it's just an off-the-wall idea. Yeah.
Which is, when you think smog and pollution, I think Africa might be the cleanest place on
Earth. Yeah, maybe that's why he wanted to do it. Maybe that's to show the contrast. Who knows?
Well, it's interesting because, as a kid that age, around those 70s, I mean, we were bombarded with that whole environmental oil crisis, industrial pollution kind of messaging. So he really did hit it on the head. I mean, it was a little over the top with the sludge in the harbor and everything, but he got his message across.
Yes, he certainly did. And apparently Tanaka, who was so horrified by the finished project, had told him that he had ruined the Godzilla series. He was afraid that it would give all the children that had come to love Godzilla.
Right. Because at this point, Godzilla really was, it was no longer those monster movies. Like you said, the first one, very environmental, a lot of it had to do with the, Japanese dealing with the nuclear bomb back in the 40s. But then, it becomes playful. He becomes more comedic. It is more WWE kind of, monsters battling each other. So the kind of hit us over the head with this environmental message
there's something truly at stake here, because everybody's talking about this, this could end the world. That's usually the case with most of these giant monster movies, but you could see how it could actually happen. As we were saying before, you see the human casualties.
And even the scene where he's like over the industrial plants sucking up the smoke, and you're like, well, if we had more of these guys, maybe we wouldn't have a disastrous planet. Maybe you could just keep eating this crap.
So having said all this in defense of the movie, there are a lot of things that we can take to task here. So
it is a serious drug trip. It is such a product of its environment.
And the actual origin of Hedra is extremely vague.
It was like a science slideshow in class.
Papa, if Hedra isn't one of Earth's creatures, how did it get here?
Ken, do you know what a meteor is?
Sure, it's a shooting star that's fallen to the Earth.
That's right. Well, Hedra came attached to one of those meteors.
I wonder what kind of star would do that. Where did it come from?
Probably a star which is gluey and black, like sludge. Now, let's get some sleep.
Still doesn't successfully impart how this thing exists, because in the beginning they kind of set it up that Hedra is split up into various tadpole-like creatures that unite to become bigger. But then later on they say that Hedra came from a meteor that came down from space, from a sludge-like galaxy. Far away from a sludge-like star, that's where it must live, and it came down. But yet, if that's what happened, why are there a million Hedras that come together in the bay? If it came down as one being, then why are there several in the beginning of this movie? So that doesn't make sense. The fact that Godzilla just comes in without explanation, it's just kind of taken for granted. Godzilla will show up when humanity needs him.
Well, the little boy, Kenny or whatever his name is. Oh, he was convinced Godzilla. He had all those little Godzilla toys. That was cool.
He did. Now, that was very meta of this movie as well, because you see he's got every cool 60s Godzilla toy from every movie that's come out before. So Godzilla is a known thing. in this world of this movie. So Godzilla has come before. They've made toys of him. So
and all the bad guys.
And of all the bad guys.
Yeah, you had them all.
So they have all existed in the world of this movie, and Godzilla is a hero to humanity at this point in this movie. So he just comes when he's needed. And Ken, and the little boy Ken at one point writes a paper for his class. I don't know if you saw this in your version of the movie.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like has a dream about Godzilla coming and burning all the garbage that's floating across the surface of the ocean. And he writes a paper about it, how Godzilla would be so disappointed with us if he knew all the stuff that we're doing to the earth, which he kind of is at the end. He gives the army a look at the end, like
you got a little stink eye. Give him a stink eye.
Yeah, he's like, I saved your ass this time, but I might not do it again.
Yeah, but so we have the cartoon interludes of the Smog Monster sucking up garbage or whatever, and they just kind of come and go, and they're nonsensical. But then you also have these disco interludes, which is Austin Powers made fun of this stuff. But this was truly, you would cut to the discotheque and there's all the kids dancing with the lava lamp special effects in the background. And I will say the dancer is in a bodysuit and she has a clam right on her head. Two on the nose for a kid film. Yeah. But,
and this is rated G. This film is rated G.
And the guy's drinking. The one guy's there drinking, and all of a sudden all the dancers have mutated like fish heads. And it's a lot to take in.
I would think that guy would need to be doing more than drinking to see that.
Correct, right. Well, as I said, there's some serious drug going on and making it and probably writing.
So this is where we have the song come back in, Save the Earth.
This is an over. And I don't remember this song in the version I saw before.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely right. This is why I wanted you to watch the American International cut.
Okay.
The original version of Godzilla vs. Hedorah, if you were to get the Blu-ray of this movie, you're not seeing Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster like we viewed it on WRTV back in 1981, or how cinema audiences viewed it back in 1972. Godzilla vs. Hedorah on the Blu-ray is the international version, which Toho themselves made an English dub of it.
Okay.
And put it out to European theaters. So that's like the European English version of the movie. And the song in the movie is a Japanese song, which does not have the English lyrics of Save the Earth. It's got the same melody.
There you
it's
go.
Got the same,
I knew my brain could be faulty nowadays, but it's a little too on the nose. It's like too many fumes in our oxygen.
Yes.
We're moving to the moon now. Save the Earth. And it's very catchy. It's actually like...
And again, I marvel at the fact that they actually match the lip movements of the Japanese singers. So they had to come up with lyrics that would be the same kind of, in the same syllables and the same syntax as what.
And they use this like
Japanese,
3-4 times throughout the movie.
And yet have it mean something, the lyrics. So how somebody does that is, beyond me. But
that was pretty impressive.
So the song that's being sung in the beginning is the song that's being sung in the nightclub while the guy's seeing all the fish heads.
Yeah.
And that's the backdrop of this is Godzilla and Hedorah having their first on-land battle a few blocks away in the city. Hedorah isn't as big yet, and he's on his all fours stage as like a giant tadpole kind of a thing.
Yep.
One of the most disgusting scenes is when he's sucking up the smokestack and he's purring like a cat and he's filling up these empty sacks that are in his body. So Godzilla comes, they have like a little monster conversation where they're grunting at each other.
And Godzilla's doing this weird wiping his mouth. Like he wipes his mouth numerous times and then paws at him like a cat. Like it's a weird, I don't think I've ever seen Godzilla do it before or since.
He never has.
And at one point the kid actually starts imitating him. And the guy's like, oh, you think you're Godzilla now? And I'm like, but what does it mean? That was just like he's wiping his mouth like he just...
I took it like there's so much crap in the air around Hedorah that he's got to wipe like his face.
Oh, maybe. You stink. Like if he, I guess if he just pinch his nose, he'd be like, you're a stinker.
So they start to battle. And Godzilla grabs him and swings him around, sending chunks of Hedorah flying in every direction.
Sludge. And there's a bunch of old men playing Mahjong, and they just get buried in sludge. They die.
All you see is their hands sticking up out of the sludge.
And there's a kitty cat at one point.
In the nightclub, after the nightclub with the fish people, the Hedorah comes through the nightclub, and it's very much like the Blob, like oozing down the stairs.
Oozing down the stairs.
And oozes back out of the nightclub, realizing there's no pollution to eat in there. and a little kitty cat that he's covered in sludge after he.
No cats were harmed into making this either, although they ate him afterwards. And there was a scene, a couple of vignettes where there were like multiple TV screens of all this stuff going on, and
there's a baby in sludge.
A baby in the sludge. I want to point out, it was just in the middle of all this chaos, these talking heads and these skeletons and the fighting of the monsters, and you just see this kid buried up to his chest in sludge, crying.
This movie, especially for a kid, just sensory overload. You know, this message just being pounded over your head over and over and over again. If you don't walk out of here like as an ecological champion, then
we need to stop using fossil fuel. Yeah, that was.
And then 2 hours later, you've forgotten about it.
Let me go gas up. My RV.
So this is the beginning of the movie. So Ken is through his eyes, through the kid's eyes, and through his father's eyes, because his father is a scientist that's trying to figure out what Hydra is. And they come to the conclusion that it is like an alien tadpole that's come together with other alien tadpoles that's come from space that can transform itself into different shapes. It becomes a flying saucer at one point.
Yeah, which is kind of cool. Yeah, he's a little amorphous.
Emitting this exhaust kind of like sulfuric acid. It doesn't kill the girls that it goes over. They just cough and they run inside.
No,
everybody else,
Too much. 2, 3, and right. And right. That's it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3.
So it's only the men you see.
And then it goes right through that construction site. It goes through it. It doesn't go over it. Like,
oh, and you see the little guy jump to his death off the, and then all the girders start to melt.
as if it's a ghost. It goes right through the girders and then it melts. Yeah. So we see all those scenes of chaos and death and destruction. And then we go back to our teenage protagonist that you saw in the nightclub before, the guy that saw all the fish heads. He's making a party, right? He's planning
it's like an end of the world. Like all of a sudden Woodstock broke out.
Hydra is our own punishment, I guess. Down with environmental pollution. The March of 1 million. No. The go-go of 1 million. Great idea, isn't it? We'll get all the hip kids we know and stage a great party on Fuji. Let's do it before Hydra gets control.
Do you know 1 million kids?
Right.
So, let's stage a party on Fuji. And so the next scene is, and then it goes into another bizarre scene where it's like this black and white acoustic song, right? And they're one of the kids says,
"A million was supposed to come. They're less than 100. Don't lose your courage. One place where there is no pollutions in our hearts. Come on now, all of us. Our message is loud and strong. We're going to send it up higher."
It just boom, full color.
Then the full color,
and it's
acid rock kicks in. There's a full band there. They've got
it's Woodstock. They're all standing around the big bonfire, and it's like the little Who's in Who'sville.
And of course, wherever these kids go is where the battle is going to be. So
of course,
for some reason, Godzilla and Hydra's final battle is going to be on Mount Fuji.
Well, I think Hydra just hates disco, so he was out there.
Yeah, he was there. He heard that, and he was like,
I'm going across the galaxy, and I'm putting a stop to that crap.
So then, at this point, when Hydra shows up, Godzilla and him tussle a little bit. Godzilla gets his eye, how would you call it? The cannon,
right, which is cool, actually.
It is.
Someone just standing off screen throwing that shit.
Right. So Godzilla ducks the first one. And it stands back up like, haha, then gets it right in the eye.
No!
He gets it, I think, in the right eye.
Right.
But then it's the left eye that's closed for the rest of the movie.
So either they...
Or it's the other way around. He gets it in the left eye.
Either way, it swaps. It swaps. But then he gets revenge on Hydra. He starts punching holes in him.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden his eyes oozing black, and next thing you know, that's all like covered over. So now he just only got like one eye.
An eye for an eye.
And his eyes look like kiwis. They were bright red, but the inside was like a sliced piece of kiwi.
And the whole shape of his head kind of looks like an owl to me. I don't know if you got the same
Yeah,
impression.
it's weird because his eyes are turned like if he blinked, he'd be blinking left and right. He wouldn't be blinking up and down.
And let's talk about the design of this creature for a second. Talking about a walking garbage bag, this is literally kind of a walking garbage bag.
Yeah, basically. I mean, you can tell there are times when the guy's in the suit and you can see arms and feet kind of, but otherwise he's he's sludge. He's a giant ball of sludge.
And you got all these things like appendages dripping from him, which I think were kind of meant to emulate dripping sludge, but they're solid. It's a solid suit at the same time.
But you'll see every now and again when you'll see like stuff pouring out of him, almost like he's peeing his pants or whatever. It gets the point across. If you're going to make an environmental film and you're going to talk about sludge, whether they called him Smog Monster or not, he fit the bill.
Definitely. And the scene where talking about when stuff just secretes from him, there's one point in the final battle where Godzilla gets thrown down a ditch and Hydra just takes a dump on him, for lack of a better diarrhea coming out of him.
We actually call that the Cleveland Steamer.
And Godzilla is in a bad way, let me tell you, during this sequence.
Yeah.
Covered
until he starts flying backwards, which is just...
Now, I read about this. Now, this was thrown in as kind of a concession to lighten the mood of the movie.
Oh, because it was too heavy-handed?
It was too heavy-handed up to that point.
Let's do something silly.
Puts his arms out as if this is like a thing that he always does. This is when Hydra's on the run at the end, because the humans have created these two like big drive-in movie screens, right? That are like electrodes that run into each other. And the thought is that they're going to dry out Hydra because he's being made of sludge. So in order to do that, they have to get him in the middle of these two drive-in movie screens. And when they're trying to do this initially, just by their headlights to draw Hydra in, before this, their only offensive against Hydra was dropping clean oxygen on him, which doesn't work. So they're drawing him into these two big giant screens, and this one guy in a helicopter is coming with his oxygen. And the one sergeant says, that
maniac!
Picture like Mel Gibson in Lethal Weapon flying this helicopter.
Right.
The unhinged helicopter pilot. I'm going in.
That albino jackrabbit. I'll get him.
And Danny Glover sitting next to him. I'm too old for this. So Hydra, they do zap him a little bit. And he realizes that, okay, this thing is going to fuck me up for
right.
So I better get out of here. So that's when Godzilla does the flying trick to go after Hydra to bring him back. So he puts his arms out, puts his tail between his legs, head down, and through the power of his own atomic breath, flies.
Backwards.
And then you hear that ridiculous Godzilla theme that's really only in this movie. That it's really kind of plays up
fun little,
like a kid-friendly kind of a theme. So he lands on Hydra, he drags him back, and through the power of his own atomic breath, kicks the electrodes into action, thus drawing out.
Yeah, because Godzilla figured it out. Godzilla's like, I see what these humans are doing.
Yep.
All right, let me help out.
But they lost the power at one point, so they couldn't do it for themselves. So he
kickstarts it.
And so then Hydra at that point is done, basically, for all intents and purposes.
Oh, he just starts tearing them apart at that point.
And then there's one thing that's always been a question is at one point he tears two what look like globes out of Hydra's body. Are they eggs? Were they meant to be, another Smog Monster? Are they the life force of Hydra? You don't know.
No. And they couldn't be his eyes because his eyes were red.
Right.
And I'm like, did he just rip out his testicles? But there was a scene where you brought it up before where these pustule blobs that were filling up, these sacks were filling up on him as he's sucking up this from the smokestack. And didn't little hands or something break through them at one point? And it was just like, oh, are we going to get like smaller?
No. I think that was when he was on top of Godzilla, and Godzilla put his hands through him.
Through him. Okay, I misread that.
And there was one point, and I don't know if this is a myth or not, because one of the Godzilla figurines that I have from this movie shows not only his eye closed, but his skeleton showing through on his hand that he puts through Hydra. And I was looking for that when I watched it for this
Right.
podcast. Does the skin actually wear away from Godzilla's hand from being inside Hydra?
Exposed
And
to-
there are some shots where it looks like his hand is white, but I always took that as being the mud from Hydra, the
Right,
sludge caked
not-
on his hand.
Huh.
And not having the skin eaten away. But it's an interesting theory that's maybe what that is.
You could just keep Hydra around, and Godzilla gets out of line. You just dump him on him. Interesting. So it is a weird. It's an odd one for sure.
The fact that Godzilla tears him up again to the strains of Save the Earth at the
Yeah, well, you got to bring that theme song back in there.
And of course the kid has to thank him. Godzilla!
Thank you,
Godzilla!
God. Oh, I know, he's like screaming. He's like, dude, just let me go. Come on. And gives him a little backhanded wave. Okay, I'm out of here.
So this movie is derided and loved at the same time by Godzilla
Yeah, I
fans.
can understand. I enjoyed watching it again. It is not one of my favorite Godzilla movies by any means, but it's special.
It is completely unique in the Godzilla series. It stands alone. A lot of the movies we were talking about before, even with King Kong versus Godzilla, they rely on stock footage from other movies to fill in the gap. Be it if King Ghidorah is in your movie, they've got other movies to steal from to use King Ghidorah fight scenes, right?
Yeah.
But this movie is completely original. I don't think they used one piece of stock footage from another Godzilla film, and just for that, I give it plaudits. But
I don't think you could.
Yeah,
now,
no, you couldn't.
let's talk Godzilla just in general, because do they make a completely different costume for each movie?
Well,
because his look has changed numerous times over the year.
I think they try to use the same costume at least for a couple of movies before they get a new one. For this particular movie, it was the same costume as, firstly, it was used in Destroy All Monsters, then it was used in Godzilla's Revenge, then Godzilla versus the Smog Monster, and then it was last used in Godzilla versus Gigan, and then they dumped it. But it's my favorite, I think, of all the Godzilla costumes, is the one that's this era, yes. But yeah, to answer your question, I think every 5 years or so they
Okay, yeah. Because he definitely, I mean, if you go through strategically from beginning to end, he has changed. And obviously the new Legendary, they've really stepped him up. I mean, he still looks like Godzilla, which I'm happy about, because let's not even talk about that Roland Emmerich piece of crap.
Yeah, no.
That there was no way that was a Godzilla movie. Well, the end just derived into Jurassic Park with the little
in Madison Square Garden, basically.
Right, correct.
Yeah. Some history of this movie. This is a very funny anecdote. The actor that played Hydra had to have his appendix out, and this happened while he was on set, his appendix exploded.
Oh my God! In costume?
In costume. They couldn't get the costume off in the hospital. They had to operate while he was having the Hydra costume. And no, this isn't even the weirdest thing of the story. This guy, he discovered, because this was the first operation he'd ever had, he discovered at that point that he was immune to painkillers. So not only did he have the Hydra costume on, he felt the entire operation. He probably passed out from the pain.
Well, I'm just saying, these suits have got to be super heavy. I would think that, you're using wires to lift the tail and all this other stuff, but these things, I mean, like you said with the Smog Monster, it's a solid piece. You got the dripping and all this other stuff going on. You got these, I would think that, you'd have to be very physical.
And I know with hot studio lights on top of that, I can just imagine people passing out left and right with these suits on.
There's one great scene where the teenage kids are in the car, and all of a sudden the ooze starts over the top of the car, and they're like, we need to get out of here. It's like, no, you need to stay in the car, because obviously he's eating it. But as they're running away, there's a great shot of Hydra in like in front of the factory, and he's got all these little cars underneath him that he's eating. That was a really cool scene. That was nice. I like that a lot.
And again, that was another throwback, I thought, to our earlier film, The Blob, when the Hydra's coming over the windshield. I thought was very reminiscent of that.
Yep.
And did you know that the director of this, Bano, this was not the end of his Godzilla association, even though he was fired? He actually was a consultant for the 2014 Godzilla, for the Legendary. What he wanted to do was, he actually wanted to make, I think he got the rights from Toho in 2013 to make a Godzilla IMAX movie called Godzilla to the Max.
I remember that.
Yes, and this was the director. This was the guy, and he wanted to make his adversary a modern version of Hydra called Deathla. That's what it would have been if he made the 3D, but it never happened. So they transitioned that into the Legendary Godzilla, and that's how he became involved with the Legendary Pictures Godzilla.
So that 3D thing never came
It never came to be. It never will, unfortunately.
Never will. Well, who knows? I mean, Legendary brings this guy back, and we start, people start going back to these movies.
Yeah.
Who knows? It never, yeah.
But yeah, once Godzilla versus the Smog Monster ended on Black Friday, it would always be dark out. Thanksgiving had ended. Winter, Christmas was just around the corner. The leaves are down from the trees. It's a dreary day outside. This movie perfectly captured, I think, that day after Thanksgiving holiday vibe for me. So I can only, if I ever watch this, it has to be at Thanksgiving time. I cannot watch
we're
it
close.
We're
right here. We're right here, man.
We are here.
Yeah.
So for that, I don't think we gave buckets to King Kong versus Godzilla.
We did not.
Let's go back and revisit that quick before we give this guy buckets.
Yes.
So I would say King Kong versus Godzilla. It's one of the more classic ones. The battle is great.
Yep.
It's very entertaining. The King Kong costume, not so much.
Not so much.
But I would give King Kong versus Godzilla probably 3.5 buckets.
I'll go 3.
3?
3.
Now, Godzilla versus the Smog Monster, on the other hand. This is not your favorite of the Godzilla films.
No,
this
it's
is
not.
My absolute favorite of the Godzilla films. This is my go-to Godzilla anytime. Like if ever I'm discussing Godzilla, I have to talk about the Smog Monster. So because of that, because I'm such a Godzilla fan, this falls probably within my top 10 films, period.
Wow.
Godzilla versus the Smog Monster. I would go 4.5 with this.
4.5.
Just from my personal connection with this movie, I would give it 4.5.
And that's what it's all about, though, right?
Yeah.
Who cares that it's on some list of the worst movies ever made? Yes. It really doesn't matter.
Yeah, you might after you give your popcorn.
Well, no, listen, I enjoyed it. It is a product of its time. We've said that numerous times. Rewatch it, some of this stuff. It's sad to say that the environmental message is still relevant.
Yeah, it is.
You know what? I might have to say 3 and then bump my Kong to Godzilla up to 3.5. I think that's
you're more of a traditionalist when it comes to.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I've only seen the Smog Monster a couple of times, and I do remember watching it as a kid, not really connecting to it in any way, shape, or form. There's not a lot of Godzilla.
True. Yeah, it's all about Smog Monster and its effects on.
Right. Yeah.
Humanity.
As a kid, I didn't, it just didn't hit home for me. I don't need to see some chick in a cat suit dancing, singing about saving the world.
You see, I love that shit. So that's
that's fine. That's why we do this.
Yeah. So that leads us into our confessional this week. A special Thanksgiving Day confessional.
Confessionals.
What is your favorite Godzilla monster? Barring Godzilla, of course. But what is your favorite secondary Godzilla monster?
I'm going to let you go first since I went first last.
Well, I probably showed my hand already, so I'm going to have to say Hydra for this one. And I like to pronounce it Hydra. I don't go for the Hedorah. Yeah.
There's a lot of cool designs over the years. Mothra, well, King Ghidorah is always classic. The 3 heads, you can't go wrong with that. But for just sheer difference, and that's one of the newer ones, which is Biollante.
Oh,
I think he's a really cool. I mean, Gigan is up there. Don't get me wrong; those big scythe sickle arms or whatever. He just never was able to do anything with those.
If you could do some massive slashing,
because you would think that there's some serious decapitation going on. All you gotta do is just slice twice and boom.
He always reminded me of Foghorn Leghorn a little bit. I say Godzilla.
I say Godzilla. So I think Biollante is cool because he kept mutating. He kept, he went from this plant-like thing, and he looks like Audrey too. Don't get me wrong.
Yes, he does. Very much.
Hey there, Godzilla, get over here. Let me eat you.
I remember the first time I saw Biollante, I was like, where is this going? Because at first it was just a giant rose. I'm like, this cannot be what Godzilla fights. And then what he becomes at the end was one of probably the better of the Godzilla creatures from that later period.
I think the last couple of years they've really kind of gone downhill with some of their bad guy monster designs. Like you were saying, the Kong Skull Island, those bone skull crushers or whatever.
That's what they're called.
Whatever he called them. They were cool looking, but they weren't anything revolutionary. I want to see some crazy ass monsters. What was the one that he had? He almost looked like a knife. He had like a shark mouth, but he had like this big, huge pointed head.
That I think you're thinking of a Gamera movie. That was Gamera versus Gyron. That was the Gamera movie. Do you remember that Gamera movie with the 2 alien chicks that kidnap the two kids and want to eat their brains and they shave their heads.
Brains. Well, Space Godzilla has always been a cool looking one too.
Space Godzilla is good too. Yes.
Yeah.
Although, you know what? It's funny. I think that the acting in these Godzilla movies has gotten worse as time goes on.
Yeah.
If you're to watch like one of the 60s ones and a modern one, the acting is so bad, seemingly so. I don't know if it's just me.
Right.
It just seems that the acting is so overwrought and melodramatic. It's just they're trying.
Melodramatic. Batla is another one that I thought was kind of cool.
Yes, that was a bizarre one.
I will tell you. So I think Ben has a lot of these figures. I'm trying to remember who was it. Bandai did a whole series a couple years ago.
I've got many of them myself.
Yeah.
Jet Jaguar was always a favorite of mine.
Jaguar. That was a great character.
And he's got his own song. The Jet.
Yes.
Jaguar,
yeah.
Jet Jaguar.
But what about even like so Mecha Godzilla is very iconic. But what about they did it? Which one was it? Was it King Kong Escapes?
Where they did Mecha Kong. Mecha
Kong.
Yep.
He was cool. I mean, obviously, he never fought Godzilla, but over the years, they've some very impressive creatures.
Yeah, I always liked King Caesar as well. He was in.
Yeah. He's like a big floppy dog.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Always forgotten. He's in the first Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, and he was kind of on the sidelines, but he got some good shots in.
Well, so go to like, was it Tokyo SOS or is it Final Wars, where they brought in a lot of these guys, even for like little cameos at the end.
Revamped versions. Like Hydra was in Final Wars as a revamped version.
Right. Even the Roland Emmerich Godzilla shows up just to get his ass handed to him.
Yep.
Which was a great little backhanded slap. So
but you may disagree with this, but I think that Hydra was maybe Godzilla's toughest challenge.
Well, he really, I mean, most of these guys, it's the same old. He's down for the count, and then all of a sudden he miraculously comes back and saves the day or whatever. Mothra's done. They stop using Mothra. If I see those two little girls one more time.
Yeah, they seem to really want to bring Mothra back. They always try to sell Mothra
I think
hard.
Mothra is very iconic as a Godzilla nemesis, but I really hope that this legendary, Godzilla King of Monsters, I mean, we know these creatures are coming back. So I hope that they all step up and really kind of reimagine these guys.
And do them justice, because it's going to be Rodan, it's going to be King Ghidorah, and it's going to be Mothra.
And I think Rodan's always been kind of
forgotten.
I mean, he's cool and whatever, but he needs a little revamping.
Yeah, that first Rodan movie is a great, great movie. And the costume design on the first Rodan movie, he kind of got silly looking as time went on. Especially,
I think they all did.
Yeah. And Destroy All Monsters, it's the Rodan in the original is not the same Rodan as you see in Destroy All Monsters.
Right.
Go back to that first movie, and it's a really nice design.
So we'll see. We'll see what they bring to the table. These movies have been kind of downgraded to kiddie fare, and so to bring these guys back and to really make them serious, you've gone to the extent of making Godzilla a much more formidable looking creature in the legendary. He's not again, he's you get away from the man in a suit and he's CG, and you can kind of create a slightly different physique and whatever. I'll see. Do we know if Anguirus is coming back in this one?
That would be nice if he did.
I would like to see Anguirus.
His buddy.
He's always they're all like friends.
It's like the Skipper and Gilligan, his little buddy.
Yeah. We just don't need to see any Mila.
No, please.
No Godzuki.
Oh, imagine if they did. Well, they actually did kind of bring back Godzuki in the Space Godzilla movie.
Yes.
Godzilla's
the little babies.
The little baby Godzilla. That's what they called it. Baby Godzilla.
So there we go. Yeah. So that's it. Our monster movie mayhem.
So everybody, happy Thanksgiving. Tomorrow morning, be sure to watch that Macy's Day Parade and enjoy your dinners with your.
And let's hope. Maybe PIX is like, what can we do with this?
Maybe, yeah.
What we need to do. We need to go back to old school.
Or some cable channel at least. Do a Google search for Godzilla.
Yeah,
and see what
Meat
comes up.
Decade or whatever. One of those sci-fi channels. Yeah. Somebody. There's an audience out there.
So, Jeff, happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, same to you. You and your family.
Into the holiday season with TMI for the first time.
We're fastly approaching.
Yeah.
You know that favorite holiday special.
Oh yeah, that's coming.
Confessionals.
That's coming. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, cool.
All
awesome.
right.
We're out. Enjoy.
Bye, everybody.